Everybody, welcome back to AWOK Talk. This is the third episode here on the Brick Something channel. And of course, it's myself, Brick Something, and Adam from Highly Articulated. And we're talking more lore. We're continuing our journey through the first couple of issues of this comic book. The first arc, as we've said, is really 5 comic book issues. And we're actually only on issue number 2. We're slowly going through this and looking at the different sort of subplots, taking you through. And hopefully it's interesting for you to kind of check out the art. Hopefully there's enough of a tease there for you to realize I should really be going to Spiro Toys and downloading these comic books and buying the hard copies. So far we've gone through and kind of established the background. We've looked at the main conflict. We've established our main character, Pale, who's discovered that he's actually a clone of the main antagonist, Kali. And now it becomes this little bit of a chase that we're set up. We've mainly focused on Pale. So what would you say were the main highlights of sort of where Pale as a character is at?
So we basically looked at the development of sort of Pale's story. We looked at the dream that he had. We looked at him meeting Atreyu of House Feralist. We looked at their sort of initial interaction, which was the ceremonial fight, as it were, and then we looked at the two of them going off on this adventure. You know, the kids not being able to sit at the adult table, got their own ideas and just sort of went out on their adventure. And the last thing we saw was them foolishly rushing headlong into horrid territory and basically getting caught by the horrid.
Yep. So this would be like the point in the TV show where we go earlier that day, right? Because what we kind of jumped past in following that story was what Kali and Jadu and the Horrid were up to. And that's really where we start today.
Yes.
If folks remember issue 1, we talked about how it's revealed there is this sort of cloning plot going on, and that something is going on with our main villain, Kali. He seems,
and that something's amiss.
Yeah, something's amiss. You know, he gets injured and then they have to heal him. And in that process, we see him sort of getting angry, a little bit out of control, a little bit unstable. And at the end of issue 1, we see this whole weird transformation where he's almost human. And so that's where we're starting now. So before Pale and Atreyu basically show up on their doorstep, before the big capture scene, we see Jadu, presumably in Horrid headquarters, walking down these corridors, right? And I can almost hear this as if it were a cartoon or a movie, right? Silent, her footsteps, right, down these empty metal cold halls. I love that we get a sense of what Horrid architecture is, right, and their technological capabilities just from these sort of establishing shots. We see a couple of different Horrid folk that are different species, right?
Yeah, what do you think those two are? To me, those are like on the right, it's a hyena. And on the left, I mean, I'm not sure, some sort of dog or some sort of bear, but I mean, it feels a bit small for a bear.
Yeah, I actually, the face really screamed bear to me. And it could be, there are smaller bears. And then on this one actually seemed less hyena. Could be, but almost seems so well groomed, almost like a dog, right?
Sure, yeah. When I kind of think about,
Doberman?
That's the other thing. When I think about the art that we've seen for the hyenas, this looks a little more like terrier or bulldog or not bulldog, sorry, but like kind of pit bull or something like that.
Yep.
The hyena looks a little rougher. This looks a little cleaner. So.
And then in the back there, we've got 2 giant gorillas.
Yeah.
With, that mace that we do have in the figures that we'll take a look at later. So again, Horrid, as we kind of talked about last time, it's a mix so far, right? And these seem to be more of the ones that are actually in the base. So they're definitely more like military discipline, clear uniforms, matching armor, unlike some of the things that we saw previously and we'll see again later in this issue. I love this shot here. It was sort of like, that's very cinematic to me.
The over the shoulder, like you could, I mean, I can just see her walking. We haven't been doing frame by frame, page by page, so we haven't really talked about this. But the way that the action progresses has a very cinematic feel to it. It has the implied motion and sort of the sort of dynamic nature of the shot from the back, you kind of feel that pan shot. If this was, an animated cartoon or
Mhm.
a film, yeah, I can just feel this
Yeah.
being that,
Yep. I do too, and I can hear the sound of machinery, the buzz of
Mhm.
machine of computers or whatever. And what I also sort of see is take a look at the faces of the guards. This is something I keyed in on in their eyes. Like she's clearly in authority.
Mhm.
They're standing in attention, and as she passes, there's this like, oh, something's up.
I get the feeling from like all everything that happens sort of inside any
Mhm.
horrid base just seems to be really tense. Everybody's just on a knife edge all the time. With Kali kind of losing it, he's like just absolutely losing his temper and going off a little bit.
And immediately, I think of like Imperial stormtroopers or First Order stormtroopers.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think of Kylo Ren walking by and those two in the
sure.
back, like, oh
Turning around and going the other
yeah,
way.
yeah,
I've started to get the impression that Jadu is really in charge.
yeah.
Like Kali is the general,
Uh-huh.
but I keep thinking, what would he do if she didn't revive him or sort of transfer his consciousness or whatever? Like, does she seem like she has sort of the ultimate power?
Yeah.
I think with Jadu, there's more going on there, and I'm very curious to see where that goes, or if that goes anywhere, or if I'm just over analyzing it because we spend way too much time looking at these. And
Sure.
even in that
Living
next frame
moments.
that you're just sort of pulling up there with the
Yep.
with the sort of clones in different stages of development,
Yep.
she seems to be the one pulling the strings, which I think is fascinating.
And so here you have the experiments or the clones or whatever's going on. And again, we're saying this because some of this is revealed in the text, but it is still fairly vague. You get impressions of what's going on, but no clear exposition that says this is the experiment, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So check out these visuals, folks. It's sort of like we're looking at the cloning factory, if you
Hmm.
will, and we're seeing babies, really, not quite embryos, but they sure look humanoid,
Yeah.
like they're anthropomorphic, and we have very similar biology to apes. But this one maybe being the closest thing here in this face to feeling very simian.
Yeah. And I've been trying to sort of look back, and it seems to me like the way that the host for Kali kind of comes out of the tank is
Hmm.
human. And
Hmm.
then it kind of, as the consciousness is sort of inserted in there,
Hmm.
it sort of converts, it kind
Hmm.
of like to sort of turn into Kali, turn into
Yep.
the ape. And again, implications of that, like, do these not have consciousness on their own? Are there other consciousnesses that have the ability to be put into one of these clones? Is Kali different? Like, is it a digital process? Is it a magical process? Is it,
Hmm.
what is it? What
And to
is it? We
add
just don't know still.
to that, what we do know is that Pale is has been established as one of these clones. So
Mm-hmm.
potentially these could be pulled out as well. We don't know, but we do know that at least it's happened once and that he's living his own independent life with his own
Yes.
independent consciousness. So it is pretty fascinating. Like, what are these things? And we'll see a little bit more as the story progresses. But here we have Kali.
Yeah, this shot though gives me
Judgment
Demolition
Night.
Man. So there's that Sylvester Stallone shot where he's sort of encased in what looks like an ice cube, right? And he's
Mm.
in that sort of position, and I just got that all of a sudden right here.
You know
I
where I went? That's where I thought you were going. Bum 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 bum. I went Terminator.
There's that too, yeah. The T-1000 as it's sort of landed in present
Yep.
day.
Both him and when is it Reese? Is that his name? Yeah, when Reese come through to
Yeah, yeah,
our
yeah.
reality, they wake up, they're in this pose and they're steaming.
Hmm.
I do
Hmm.
want to note that, based on what we saw earlier, this is not like a huge secret. There's
Hmm.
clearly
Yeah.
like guards around, so this is not something that seems unknown, at least to the guards inside the base.
Hmm.
And here they are having their conversation, right? So he's come out of this process. They have their conversation, and pretty quickly, Kali is asking about Pale.
Another thing that I've noticed about these interactions that Kali and Jadu seem to have in moments where he seems to almost lose touch with reality, and she has to
Mhm.
kind of bring him back. And everybody seems to be not necessarily scared of Kali, but the Horde seem to be scared of Kali. Like they view
Yeah,
him as their ruler, and he seems to rule with an iron fist. But Jadu doesn't seem scared of him at all. Like she doesn't even seem worried that he's going to lose his temper with her. It reminds me of Black Widow with Hulk, where
sure.
she can like
Yeah.
calm him down, and she's the only one that
Mhm.
can. And it's like, and she's not scared of him at all because she just
Mhm.
trusts that inside the beast, there's still a consciousness. I just find that sort of interesting as well, and I'm curious again the mystique of Jadu, like how long has she been sort of doing this
Yep.
to get to the point where she's just, this is just daily day to day stuff. It's just, this is just blase, like, oh, we'll put them in a new host and we'll
Yeah.
just
I
we'll
almost see
just
her
go on with
rolling
our
her
lives.
eyes, right? Almost like, oh God, here he goes again on his like little tirade.
Hmm.
Sure, this is what happens every time.
Hmm.
And we get that a little bit in their exchange. It's clear that she is, like you said, in the Avengers, the sun seems pretty low there, right?
Yeah,
There you
yeah,
go.
exactly. Sun setting,
And
big guy.
yeah, and here she is, right? Yep, here you go. And pretty quickly they're in it. They're like,
Hmm.
we know what we need. He's asking about like a report, essentially. It's clear what he's looking for, right? He brings up, we know where he is.
We need spectral pale.
You need spectral pale. This is Adam's campaign to get a
Man, I just
translucent
need that
blue.
translucent pale figure. Here's the
Yeah.
reason we could get it, right? It's like,
Yeah. And it'll be about this big so
I'll
that
take
it's in
it. I'll
scale.
take it.
Cool little statue. No, it looks great. It would be a great figure. But yeah, again, the presence of technology, again, this is
Hmm.
not the kind of stuff that we've seen. We saw a little bit of computer screens being used
Yep.
by the Fearless, but this is like hologram technology seemingly like popping out near his hand, or maybe that's behind, I don't know. And that takes us now to the next scene. Kali in full armor about to
Hmm.
address his troops because they have a mission, right? And he's
Hmm.
about to rile up the troops to get them ready to go hunt Pale down.
In this, the first frame on this page here, when they're getting the army ready, and Kali asks if Jadu has administered the venom compound. When I read this, I was sort of like, "What's the venom compound?"
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I immediately thought of the spray paint can things in Mad Max Fury Road, where
yeah,
like, all of a sudden these guys sort of ingest whatever this is, and they're a little bit braver, they're a little bit bolder. Kali kind of sends them out and says, burn down the villages and kill everybody. Like, there's a ruthless bent to Kali. He has no concern for anybody or anything but himself. He
yeah.
needs to get Pale, he needs to get that perfect clone body, and that's all he cares about.
Yeah, so let's take a look at this little moment.
Hmm.
But this is that speech. This is the Huck speech. This is the Cobra Commander behind a pedestal. We better yet, Serpentor
Hmm.
giving the speech, riling up the troops. And this is where you see the Yahoos. And again, some of them have armor, but clearly like mismatched armor.
Hmm.
You heard things like, "We're going to burn things to the ground. We're going to kill the livestock. Whatever. Just tear everything down, so long as you save the pale ape."
Yeah, bring me the pale ape. You said Serpentor, and I thought, this I command. Yeah, it
Yep.
definitely has
Yes.
that vibe to it. A couple things that I noticed, sort of in the group shot, right, of the
Mhm.
of the of the general sort of rank and file. There's apes, there's
Yep.
gorillas, there's warthogs, there's hyenas, there's all
Yep.
these things. That one that's sort of in the purple that looks a
Yeah.
little bit out of place.
A chimp little dude wearing Jack Kirby armor, right? Sold. Again, Mad Max. Everyone's yelling, everyone's screaming. I can imagine like all of the animal sounds too, right?
Yeah, I didn't even really think about that. But yeah, now that you say that, now I'm thinking about all the different noises that they would all make.
Hmm.
And yeah, absolutely.
Cool stuff going on with this sort of military or band of conquerors. It does seem like there is a rhyme or reason to the kind of different troop.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about this a little bit the other week on Monkey Business, that the Horde tends to have, blue and
Yep.
purple as their kind
Mhm.
of colors. And so these guys all sort of fit in there. But there does seem to be a clear distinction between the proper army and then the mob.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
Horde seems to employ both. We sort of see a little bit of both here.
Then we come down here and we got this wide shot, and you see there are the sort of rabble, and then there's like well-armed forces, right? These
Yeah.
gigantic walking mechs that like could have been ripped out of Ghost in the Shell, presumably like the equivalent of a tank, right? Or an AT-AT
Yeah, yeah,
walker.
yeah.
Yeah, it's scary. Then essentially they're just gonna go out and like ravage the lands, right?
Yeah, and you get the sense too from the wide shots when they do them
Mhm.
like that
Mhm.
that there's is certainly a numerical advantage Kali and the Horde seem to have. It's completely a militaristic group.
So back to the present moment where
Mhm.
again we see our young hero with his new friend taking it upon themselves to do the mission. Didn't bring any backup, didn't tell anyone where they were going. They just took it upon themselves to show up to this horde base.
Didn't have a plan.
Nope, no plan.
Like,
They
what are
did
we
their
gonna do when we get
thing.
there? I don't know.
And we didn't go too deep into this last time, but here again, they arrive to the base. They're looking over the ledge from a distance, and it's not like they're seeing a building with like a couple guards out. They're seeing
Yes. Yeah.
a building with these massive like mech tanks,
Mhm.
and they're like, cool, let's go there, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of so they sneak in, as we said, and then they are happened upon by some kind of like biomechanical looking
Mhm.
spider. They're caught, right? They are absolutely surrounded by folks on the ground. Again, let's take a quick look. This guy's got teeth coming out like a boar almost, maybe a dog, who knows? They're screwed. Meanwhile, what's going on in this shot?
Well, so basically, this is after Kali sent the Horde out to find Pale, and Jadu is kind of like, you're not gonna believe this. He's downstairs.
Yep, he's downstairs.
He's in
Time
chains.
passes.
Like, we
Yep,
didn't have to do anything. He came
yep.
to us.
And what's great is like the shadow there too,
Mhm.
right? We don't really see much like, oh no, they're screwed. What's going to happen? And then we see them here, but there's a conversation that happens, right?
Mhm.
It's very much, again, the Force Awakens. Like, how do we do this? Do you talk? Do I talk?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's him being a smartass. And what I love is the reactions, right? Again, you can see what would happen if this
Mhm.
were animated, right? He'd be in attention, looking stern and angry, and then all of a sudden he'd have this look like, oh my God, does this guy just say that to our leader?
Pale um, just doesn't care. I mean, he's just this impetuous young hero
Mm-hmm.
that if that wasn't confirmed by how he went headlong into that cave, just the disrespect that he has for Kali,
Yep.
I think is proof that he just has no respect for authority whatsoever. For better or worse, we don't quite know yet. But Kali kind of says like, "We're gonna test you now," and he goes
Mm-hmm.
like, "Bring it on."
Mm-hmm.
I'll fight you. And Kali's like, "Whoa, dude! Like, I'm not gonna fight you. Like, we got a way to test you that has nothing
Yeah.
to do with me."
And it didn't come across as sort of a typical 80s villain, a Cobra Commander type who seemed to constantly be sort of cowardly hiding behind
Hmm.
like, no, I'm not going to fight you. Like it seemed more like he's laughing almost like, yeah, good one. Like I would bother kind of a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's also, I mean, there's an aspect of it too because he wants Pale for a specific purpose.
Yes.
So he wants to
Yeah.
know whether Pale is like worth his time and
Hmm.
worth his effort, right? So
Yep.
he doesn't want to fight Pale because he doesn't really want to have any harm come to Pale if he is what he thinks he is.
Hmm.
So he just wants to make sure that Pale is what he's been advertised to be, I guess.
Yep.
Pale is sort of like still oblivious to the fact that Kali is looking for a perfect host and wants his body. You know what I mean?
So this is the first time that they gonna have like a real conversation where both are aware that they're clones of one another, right? Or that
Yes, this
that
is
they.
this is
Mhm.
effectively the first time that they're talking to each other, knowing who each other
Yeah.
is.
And so here we find that, as you say, like he has no intention to fight him. He's got other plans. And that's where we find out about the gladiator pit, essentially, right? Again, very Mad Max. If you take the time to kind of look at what's going on here, it doesn't look like some of the droid factory earlier or whatever, the mech factory. This looks old. This looks run down, dirty, probably the smell of like blood and flesh going on. And then we get to a close up of maybe what's going on in the stands of these guys, presumably like the same soldiers that were out trying to find Pale earlier. Some of them that maybe got left behind. Like these are them looking for their entertainment for the night.
Yep.
They're eating. They've got their chips or whatever is going on. They're drinking.
Yeah.
I love just to highlight the art, because the trick here is you're dealing with anthropomorphized animals, and you could just sort of be like, oh yeah, look at this big cow looking guy or whatever. But the faces and the sort of the real kind of like personality and emotion that's in each of these, and the dynamism, like I got to give it up to Otamu in terms of just what's going on here. Like these are people effectively, right? And we get so much of a sense of what's happening here. You know, they've got their paws around each other, arms around each other. They're kind of like, this guy's like, oh, what? You know, and this guy's
the drunk guy in the back. The guy in the back,
that's that one friend, right?
His head, and he's just like, he's like, what's going on? What are we doing? Like, oh man, yeah, I love this. I just, it's just, you know, I love all of this, but that's, you know, when there's shots like this, you know, when we get more species, where we get sort of more variety, and you know, as much as there's so much world building in issue 1 and a little bit less in this one, there's frames where we get insight into this world, and I think this is one of them. But then we get, you know, the gladiator pit itself, and you know, Pale and Atreyu are down there, and then they're up against, you know, a bunch of species again.
The exchange again is perfectly like these two trying to be the fierce young warrior princes. They're just naming which ones they're going to take, and they're ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, they're like, yeah, I'll take the scaly guy, I'll take the horny guy. It's just yeah, they don't refer to anything by species or anything. They just start kind of describing their physical attributes and stuff like that.
I think he calls this one, I'll take the cold blood.
It's comical because they've just rushed in, they've got caught, like they still haven't kind of clued in to danger. That they're just like, yeah, we'll just fight and defeat these guys, like, and then we'll move on.
Again, they are being tested. They took the time to give them weapons, give them armor. Sure, you want to get painted up? Let's paint you up so this looks really cool, right?
but the other guys aren't painted up. So was Atreyu like, hey, can we get some body paint? Like, I wonder if we can maybe
like I want to look really cool when I kick your ass. Right?
They look awesome though. I mean, they look so cool. You know, I joke about them just sort of calling out and saying, oh, well, I'll take this guy, I'll take this guy.
Yeah.
But their skill in this ring, they're justified in speaking like that, right? Like we very quickly learned that
it's not false, right? It's not empty.
It's not these are trained combatants, and they are very much aware of how good they are at what they do. And you know, they don't even know who these guys are. They don't know who they're up against, but they just have supreme confidence in their abilities. The result, you know, reflects that confidence. So while it seems, you know, foolhardy, issue 1 starts with Pale in a ring with Thane. That's right. You know, and then we get early in issue 2, Pale fighting Atreyu. Like, these guys know what they're doing. They are not, they're not new to this, right? Like they've been raised to be proficient martial artists and fighters, and they're good with weapons. And so then they go about proving that.
And, you know, comic books and action go like hand in glove, right? This is like some of the best action stuff that I've seen in a while. I love it. Like the idea that, okay, we've got the establishing shot, we're ready to go. We
Mm-hmm.
see a little bit of Pale going up against someone, and it's just real sort of dynamic. I know there's just a lot going on with this sort of
Mm-hmm.
angle of the
Mm-hmm.
camera, if you will, with the arena in the background, right? Very cool, ground up, love it. Same here, right? It's impressive stuff, right?
It's really
It's
good. It is
yeah,
really good, and that's I
yeah,
agree. Like the
yeah,
the pacing and the framing and the way that they
yeah,
do it.
yeah,
um you know, I can easily fill in the frames. You get the sense of motion and you get
yep,
the sense of like where the camera would pan. It really, really is well done.
yep,
The art is executed incredibly well. And you know, the scripting is really, really good too, because it fits
yep.
perfectly. Like the pacing is really good.
It's not an add-on marketing piece that comes with the figure. This really is like some quality comic book writing
Yeah.
art. I look at here some of the decisions, right? And this is them reacting to kind of the what they're witnessing,
Hmm.
right? And also knowing that he's ready to progress this to whatever his plans are for
Hmm.
Pale for the test. Love the sort of look on Jadu's face, right? Again, the emotions that are in these faces. That's what I'm ultimately impressed by, and he does it a lot. Like, and it's still the same character again. It's not like they don't go off model. I know that that is
Hmm.
in fact Kali, but he's got different emotions.
You know, the fact that they were testing them thinking that, you know, they had a pretty good idea of what Pale was,
Yep,
and
yep,
their reaction to what Pale
hmm
is like, whoa, like
yep,
this guy
yep.
is everything we
As
thought he was and
advertised.
more.
Yep. And over here, this like flourish here, I absolutely love.
Hmm.
Very like a take on sort of what I'd say on manga. And here we see it very much like straight
Oh
out
yeah,
out of
yeah,
manga,
yeah.
right? Look at that version of Atreyu. Both of these, like this is a little bit, this is very manga in the sense that it's not 100% on model, but it's more about the feeling, right?
Yes.
Like you get all of a sudden chibi characters. This is like the clear stress, like the oh shit moment
Yeah,
where
a hundred
the
percent.
yeah,
They're
love it.
like, yo, we thought we knew what we were up against,
Yeah.
but this is not what we were ready for.
Yeah, and this is just some of the best like late 70s, 80s horror Marvel comics sort of see here.
Yeah.
This thing coming out of the corner, like, what is this? And then the reveal, right?
And it's so good.
This again truly is this is the other side of that oh shit moment, right? Like, and he's referred to, this creature is referred to as a bio beast. The sense again is tying back to that science that like we create things, right? We create venom that does something to our troops.
Yeah.
We are cloning people. And oh, by the way, we are having these experiments where we're blending technology and giant beasts and full-on cyborg arm. And it's fantastic.
Do you get the impression that this is like a Jadu side project?
I hadn't thought about that, but that certainly would make sense.
You know
Like
what I
this
mean? Like
is
if
she's the
Jadu
mind
is,
bender.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
Like what is
if
she doing while Kali's in his little tank
well, when
swimming?
Kali's out and she's checking her charts and she's like, yeah,
Hmm
okay, all the clones are, they're in their tubes and everything's good, and Kali's out on one of his little benders. What
hmm
am I gonna do today?
Yep.
Oh, I'll just take some, cybernetic implants and put them in a wolf human and then
Yep.
scale them up and
Yep.
then just
Yep.
make this beast. Like, I mean, it's got to come from somewhere. So I just thought that that's like, again, like the sort of mysteries surrounding Jadu. Like,
Yep.
I got the impression that this was her like science fair project kind of
Yeah.
thing. If that is the case, right? Like if this is a creature that they've created,
Yep.
theoretically would have potential for more of these
Yep.
creations, these
Yep.
abominations. And there's potential for, something worse,
Yep.
something bigger, something nastier.
Yep. So do we want this toy? Nah, right? I'll take two.
I think
What?
everybody wants this one. When everybody saw this frame, they were like, when do we get that figure? And I asked, we're not getting it yet, but that wasn't the same as we're not getting it ever. So I'm optimistic that we're going to get it, because I think purely out of the response that this got from people that read the comic book, um, I think this is one of those figures where even if you don't buy AWOK figures, the Void as a figure will be something that people will buy and people will talk about,
Yeah.
people will want in their collection of whatever line that they collect, because it's just such an awesome design. A cybernetic sort of oversized wolf is just too cool not to make.
So here, this now gets us bleeding into issue number 3. Right on the cover is, again, the Void. And here we got our heroes sort of like sweating a little. They're in trouble, right? They're recognizing like, what are we doing? What is this thing? But still, their bravery. They're not, they're going in. Look at this shot. Smart to keep the backgrounds kind of sparse so that we can really focus on what's happening with these characters and the action. And again, our heroes being sort of the young, well-trained heroes that they are, they're doing just fine.
They get down to business real quick.
Yeah. And I love this because this whole time we talk about the toys, we talk about 80s cartoons, but then there are these moments like this where you're reminded like, oh yeah, we're adults now and we can kind of just
It's not
do what we're
strictly
gonna
for
do.
kids.
No, not at all. I mean, this thing is pretty graphic in moments. I mean, look at that's a hit. These guys are like, whoa, did that just happen? But again, cool that we're getting these characters too in the background reacting. Here's a little bit more of the action, and the Void is going down. So they take care of him. I love the electricity going on, because again, this is some kind of manufactured bio beast, as it's referred to, the Void. And then because of the way it was drawn so sparsely, the background's there for a second to get us focusing on the battle between these 3 characters.
Yeah.
And then we're reminded as the battle goes on that, oh no, there's other people around.
Yeah.
And then we're back to, oh, right, we are still in the middle of this arena, surrounded by the enemies. They're still sort of being toyed with and tested. But something's happened, right? There's a bit of an escalation. Really, this takes us to where I think we could pause for now. We'll end it on a cliffhanger. But before we go, let's talk a little bit about Animal Warriors of the Kingdom toys. So we've seen a lot of action in this, some new characters, some characters that we learned a little bit more about. I kind of wanted to share with folks which of these things that we've seen are actually going to be coming or have already come in toy form. So let's start at the top. This is Kali. I love this figure, love the armor. This was the first one that I opened up. There's definitely something that stand out about this character. There's a lot more humanness, if you will, humanity to Kali than, say, Pale.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Pale is a good example, because Pale is sort of the figure that comes with the fewest sort of clothed or covered body parts.
Yep.
Kali is the other end of the spectrum, where apart from his head, his hands, and his feet, we don't see the animal, and then the hands, even, with the sort of the armor on the hands.
Yeah.
Even then we see less than we see with just any other character. The deco is stunning. Like I said, the Horde having the blue and the purple, and then Kali being the big bad, having all that gold. It's an absolutely beautiful figure. Like it really is just a stunning figure as far as the deco goes.
He was definitely
your big bad be sort of this regal and this attractive. When Pale is just this monkey. It
with a really bad haircut.
you kind of look at Kali and you're like, he's a pretty good looking figure. Like I think people right off the bat that aren't reading the comics that sort of don't know anything about the characters, they look at Kali and they're like, was he the good guy? He looks the most regal, but boy, are they sort of surprised when they find out that he's just, a nasty warlord.
Yeah. And it also does a good job to sort of separate them. I mean, of course, we pretty quickly in issue 1 find out that Pale and Kali are genetically connected and
Yeah.
clones.
Mm-hmm.
But again, from the outset, to differentiate them,
Mm-hmm.
it's the whole character, right? Head to toe,
Yeah.
the way he carries himself versus the impetuous kind of like F you kind of kid, right?
Yeah.
I love this armor, this shoulder
The
piece right
shoulder paws.
here.
Yeah.
So cool. Of course, we've got Jadu, who we spent a lot of time with in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, at this time, we don't have her yet in hand.
We now know that we're going to get Jadu in the Mala wave, which is effectively wave 5, which, as far as I understand, we will see sort of early in 2024. So it's not that far off, really. I can't wait. I mean, the design that we get here with the colors and things like that, and the fact that we're getting, a female buck in the line, is definitely an added bonus.
I love the accessories, like presuming that they're going to continue with what's here in the concept art. Maybe not, but I like the variety, right, of this sort of gun, the different blades, whatever this reminds me of. I think what Admiral Akbar came with, that weird little wand thing back in the day. But here's the figure. So it's kind of always interesting to me to sort of see what makes it to kind of the final figure. I'm loving this belt thing that's going on, right? This like the dual kind of layered belt.
I think this figure is going to be a really, really good looking figure.
Absolutely. And a standout because I think obviously because it's a different buck, but design wise, it kind of takes its own direction, right? It's not the armor. It's somewhat armor. I will say like some things that I was really intrigued by this were like the armbands and that kind of mixed texture. Doesn't look, at least in the render, that's there. I love this necklace thing going on. Again, just adds so much to the character, and whatever's going on here with this sculpt and the abs, well done. I really love the way that looks, because it's clear. You don't really see this much actually, but it looks like there's cloth on top of that body.
Yep.
I love that kind of detail. Yeah, she looks fantastic. Really looking forward to her. Switching it up a little bit, we do know that this is getting translated into a figure in wave 4.
Yeah, so this is the mongrel horde. This is the hyena. The hyena has an articulated jaw, which is sort of the first in the line. You get mostly the buck that we've seen in waves 1 and 2, but there's a new sort of neck collar piece. It feels like it changes the proportions of the whole buck.
It's a silhouette. You changing,
it changes
the overall silhouette.
Changes the silhouette, so you kind of, it just feels a little bit different. But you still get that horde colorway, so you get sort of the purples and the blues.
Yeah, and I just going again from concept to figure, or at least concept to render. I love the color choice here of that bright kind of turquoise. Really cool. And overall, I love the look of these, right? These figures definitely have a more illustrated / animated look versus like a Mythic Legions that I think it goes for photorealistic detail. Here we really get color blocks. That's purple armor with blue, not a whole lot of shading. Really cool looking character. Again, just a reminder for folks who aren't familiar with this line, you can take a lot of this armor off.
On that figure, you could take everything off.
Yep. Here is Gladiator Pale. Again, before he got sent out to fight, he said, can I get some red paint real quick and give me a couple seconds while I get some circles to draw. Can you hit this right here? I can't reach it.
I'm gonna get in the mood. You got some body paint.
This is the same figure we got in wave 1 with different deco in a way that's just cool looking.
It looks so good. Yeah, it really does. I mean, the deco that we're making fun of in jest, but it looks great. I mean, if you're gonna go and fight in a gladiator pit wouldn't you want to look as threatening as you can?
Sure.
You know, it has that feel of what is it, God of War, where
Yeah, it's very
the
God of
sort of
War.
the main protagonist is,
Yep.
yeah, Kratos, is that his name, or
And is it
Kratos?
Kratos or Krotos? I think it's Kratos.
Kratos is the,
Sure.
so yeah, it kind of has that sort of vibe, that kind of Viking thing too.
Yeah,
Like
very
you see
Norse.
depictions of Vikings with sort of paint to
Mm-hmm.
make them look a little more threatening. Both he and Atreyu get that vibe. The armor as well, you know, with the weapons that are kind of rusted and kind of worn
Yeah,
out.
he looks badass. I love it. I love the shoulder armor piece going on. And again, it's
Hmm.
more of a subdued metallic stuff than some of the things we've
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
seen. Here's Atreyu in his gladiator gear. He's like, "Oh man, you're painting yourself?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, no, me too." That line across the eye, like maybe more sort of like Mesoamerican or like Northern Native American with these shapes. I love it.
You know, which of them asked for the body paint first, and which of them was like, well, if he's getting some, I want some.
I mean,
Um,
it's got to be pale, right? The dude is vain with his hair, but also like, look, he went deeper, and then he like turned around and saw that he was halfway through this red thing, and he was like, wait, and didn't get to finish, didn't get to put anything on.
yeah, that's true. That's a good point. That it feels more elaborate with pale, but it's very toyetic. It
Mhm.
does make a lot of sense from the perspective of, you know, getting another version of Atreyu and Pale out there.
Yep,
I've seen a lot of people saying that like this deco of these characters
that's what they
is
want.
the deco that they
Yeah.
prefer.
Right. I think at the end of the day, as you're saying, it comes down to two words. It's cool, right?
It's
And it's
cool.
just, and of course, the void.
What you don't pick up in the comic, but I definitely get from this one, is that cybernetic arm is clearly not the same. It's
Yeah.
longer, it's thicker,
Hmm.
it's heavier.
Hmm.
There's more cybernetics there than you see in some frames,
Yep.
but there's still a lot of wolf in there as well.
My critique is I prefer, like the comic book, that he not have speedos on. It kind of it actually
Yeah,
breaks it
yeah.
up, not just from a like, oh, I'm trying to be funny around because his underwear or whatever,
Mhm.
but it just sort of like it breaks up. If I'm squinting my eyes or whatever, like it's just cool robot, boom, and then just hairy beast,
It
and they're
makes
they're
him
animals
more.
anyways. They're
It makes
covered
him more
up.
bio beast if
Yeah,
he doesn't have it.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I
yeah.
agree.
It's like then he took the time to be like, oh wait, where's my underwear?
I'm too modest. I can't not wear
Yeah.
this.
Looks awesome. And I can imagine, just based on what they've done with the armor, how well this kind of thing might be painted on that arm.
Yeah.
Um, that's going to be great. And of course, we saw in the background this sort of character and this concept. Before we get to the toy of it, I love this take on an anthropomorphized lizard.
Yeah.
I don't even know what this might be. This is like a desert kind of lizard that tend to have a little bit more thick armor, but it's really a unique looking thing. It's so cool. I love the neck, similar to that hyena, right? Where it changes the silhouette and the shape.
Yeah.
And this armor right here, it's a really cool, like almost like carapace, like bug carapace, like,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yes. There's a slightly different feel to this. There's more of a sort of a leather feel. There's more of an organic feel to this
Hmm.
armor. You know, there's differences here, but the overall silhouette feels very similar to what they've done so far. I will sort of point out that in terms of the design there, they've gone
Hmm.
away from the Speedo. And in terms of the actual sculpt, in terms of the figure, they've gone away
Hmm.
from the Speedo. So
Yep. Yep.
that sort of bodes well for, you know, something like the Void, you know, not having the Speedo.
It looks like the solution is going to be for the armor is that it's very typical of the line so far. We've
Mhm.
got these that wrap around. This is actually a part of that bicep, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's sculpted on the bicep. Yeah.
Hmm. And this is probably removable, which is interesting because they clearly have a sculpt of an all naked body, a Pharaoh Beastie version, I guess, right? And are these the same head or are these two different heads? Do you know?
Same head.
Same head. It's that mouth, that articulated jaw that gives you a completely different look when it's open.
Mhm.
That sculpting is that engineering and sculpting. The way they
Now, this
figure that is
picture
so
is
good.
pending approval because this is not a picture that anybody besides me has seen before.
Too late.
This is like the 3D printed, hand painted by Jason sample. So, you get the two forearms. Like he did the full lizard first and then the lizard with the armor. But the jaw is articulated, and I have seen this sort of articulation scheme for like how the lower jaw sort of interacts with the upper,
Hmm.
and no break in the sculpt. It looks perfect. Like you don't see sort of a hinge or anything.
Hmm.
It looks really really good from the side as well. But it's a completely new buck. Like it's not a redesign. If you look at how thick that neck is compared to the Wave 1 and Wave 2 necks,
Yep.
like this is a completely new buck. And we talked about this a little bit in the last monkey business episode, where
Hmm.
this opens the door for a bunch of lizards, but even potentially, fish, and sort of other things where,
Yep.
if you change the head and you change the hands and the feet, like they did with the cats and the apes, you can kind of mess around with species.
They're just such a cool, different looking
Hmm.
thing. So, in addition, we saw a ton of the other horrid troops, right? So far in Wave 1, we've gotten this horrid Ravager. The actual animal that's underneath there is a mandrill, based
Hmm.
on the face deco. For whatever reason, I love the horrid Ravager way more than I do the Chunari Legionary. And
Interesting.
yeah, I do. I think it's because of that face. There's
Hmm.
something about that face that I've really enjoyed. If you just popped off the head and had another head, like some of the things that we saw here in the background in the comic book, you could easily this could easily become a cat like
Yep.
horrid
Yeah.
troop. And we're seeing some of the heads and the head packs that would work with this. I know you've done the math and the science to figure out which heads
Yes.
work, right?
Yeah,
So
so as far as that goes, yeah,
mhm,
between like whether it's the Horrid or the Chunari, if you take the Primal Ancients and you take the Ravager, the Legionary, the stuff that's coming in Wave 2, and then what we're getting with Wave 3, with more troop builder stuff, there's like 10 combinations that you can come up with for either of them. Just by swapping armor and sort of swapping parts here and there. And that doesn't even count for like variations, right? Like
yep,
you could do more unique characters if you say like, oh, this guy only has shin pads, but he doesn't have, wrist or the forearm gauntlets or whatever, right? You could sort of even go further. For the Horde alone, we've got the Horde Ravager in Wave 1. We've got a Primal Ancient in the Horde Scavenger in Wave 2. In Wave 3, we've got the Horde Brute, which is like the Thane sized gorilla, as
hmm,
well as the Horde Infantry, which comes with two heads. So I mean, you got to buy two of those. You could just build out armies. The numbers are kind of endless, especially once you start layering them and you start being less picky about, oh well, wait, you used that head twice, kind of thing. The Horde specifically, to me, lends itself to
yeah.
just having all these random figures in sort of different combinations.
So just to kind of close it off, these figures are coming now. Wave 2, which was part of that sort of initial Kickstarter and pre-order process through the backer kit
Hmm.
afterwards,
Hmm.
is coming. And we're looking at some pictures right here of the container, which has made it off the ship onto a truck being delivered to Spiro. This is what that looks like. It's a single container for this wave. You can get a sense of how many are packed in here. You see, is it like 40 something? Is that what I'm looking at per
I don't know how many
case?
boxes it is. I think those cases are 20 figures per
You think that's a
case.
20? That looks, I don't know.
Although that does look like a 40.
Yep, that looks like 40 to me. Sometimes fans don't have a sense of the scale that they're operating on. We just think like, oh yeah, these are toys and it's all the same. This is
Hmm.
what Hasbro does. Like, this is not what Hasbro does. This is not what Mattel does. So it's actually in product terms, not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Who knows how many of these are spoken for in terms of ordered? They're going to have
Hmm.
stock, and
Hmm.
some of it's going to be sent
Hmm.
off to retailers.
I absolutely think this is a line that people aren't switched on about just
No.
yet, but it's so close to being. And I think as soon as that Thane figure gets out
Yeah.
into people's hands and people start
Yeah.
reviewing it, people start seeing pictures of it, I think it's going to be the tipping point. I think that
Yep.
figure specifically, when I talk to people that aren't Animal Warriors of the Kingdom fans, they're like, oh, is that the line with that gorilla? And I'm like, you better believe it is.
Yep. Yep.
We're sort of on the precipice of this line absolutely blowing up. And when we talk about, there being sort of one container worth of figures, I'm very thankful that mine are already spoken for,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm not going to be missing out, because I think there's going to
Yeah.
be a lot of people kicking themselves very, very soon when these figures do start selling out, and they start getting much harder to get, much more expensive to get. I mean, that's part of why we're doing this. We want
Yeah.
people to get into it. We want people to order a couple figures and see for themselves how great this line is, and read the comic books, and just see how good the lore is and how the story will, I think, inspire you to go and get more of the figures.
This is a great looking wave. And I'm really excited because we're now going to get some of the beasties, right? A whole lot of new cats, and the head packs are going to kind of open up a whole new possibility of what we can do with the figures that we now have in hand.
Yeah.
It's going to be really exciting. And I'm with you in terms of Thane in particular, because he's such a standout character. That was the one that got my eye. And when I'd show off the line of people, that was also the one that would get people's attention.
That gets the most
people,
attention. Yeah.
But seeing over on Kato and Inutabi's the official podcast,
Yep.
when they were looking at those figures, seeing them in hand, even for me, who's been looking at these things, it was an eye opener. Like, oh, these are going to be huge.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think it's going to have that effect of creating some chatter, I'm assuming, on social media. But
absolutely.
Here's another shot of after a hard day's work, I'm assuming, of unloading that container into their storage facility.
Yeah.
It's 40.
There you go.
Here we've got 40 of the is it Chennai infantry, 40 of the Horde scavenger. So
that could be okay. So it could be 40 primal ancients per box, because I think it's 20 standard figures per box.
Because they're smaller boxes.
Yeah.
And this is what we're working with, man. So again, we got General Thane, we've got two of the beasties, Vero Atlas, Blight, who we have yet to see in the comic book.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be seeing some of that. If you're looking at maybe the title intro video of AWOK Talk, you'll see that. And Cordoon. And again, Cordoon, one of those, this is the pirate character that we've heard sort of mentioned. But I did want to point out that I spied characters with very sort of similar looks. At least they seem to be going to the same armorer. Right. Or what is the name of the Lynx character that is
Lexion?
Lexion is very much reminds me of this character, even with the head.
Yeah.
And we know, like, it's not like they don't pay attention to these comic books, and it's a completely separate process, because this lizard looks pretty much like what we were looking at earlier.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah. Is this the whole wave? I feel like there's a couple. No, there's some beasties that aren't here. So yeah, there's a couple of other the head packs.
Yeah, there's 5 of the primal ancients. There's only 2 represented there, and then there's Lexion, which isn't represented as a main figure here. Then there's the 3 head packs as well.
It's going to be a good summer. They dropped there, I think, effectively yesterday or today.
Well, they arrived to the warehouse the day we're recording this.
Yeah, that'd be great if we have these in hand by Monkey Business, or by the time this thing comes out, right?
I guess one of us will probably have something in hand. It might be you, but that's fine.
Yeah. If you want to see what these look like in hand, check out Inutabi and Kato's video. I had fun with that video.
For sure.
You should see that too and get a sense of it. Before we go, Adam, there is one other thing that is a little bit of a curveball that I didn't tell you about, that I would like to talk about really, really quickly. I wasn't aware until these photos dropped, but I didn't realize that Trevor 16 Shooter was going to be shooting these figures.
They look beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't think Trevor can take a bad picture.
Yeah. On that note, if you're unfamiliar, Trevor Williams, aka 16 Shooter, is the official on-staff photographer for Four Horsemen and has been doing those photos for a while now. All the stuff that you see on the packages and the promo is done by him. We both love that toy line, and a huge part of what makes that toy line is the photos that we see of the prototypes as they come out and as they're announced, and that drives up excitement. So I was super excited to recognize that, oh, those are Trevor's photos, and like the full on, like in a Dio studio shot is wonderful to see these figures get that kind of treatment.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, is that something that you knew was going to happen, or just sort of in real time as they came out?
I knew that there was intention there to have Trevor shoot these figures. Yeah.
Okay.
But I will say this, that like in conversation with Trevor, I know that Trevor absolutely loves these pictures, and he loved, working with these figures as well, because they're so toyetic, and they lend themselves so much to photography, just in terms of the posability, in terms of the colors, how much fun they are. Right? It's a little bit different than some of the stuff that he shoots.
Yep.
A lot of the Mythic Legions, and he kind of comes from a Star Wars background, but he shoots a lot of Star Wars stuff, and whether that's Hot Toys or Black Series or whatever, they tend to be on the more realistic side. They're sort of aiming for more of that kind of photo realistic kind of a look, whereas these are just like we've said, more toyetic, more cartoon oriented, and so I know that he had a lot of fun shooting them. That one might be my favorite. That Vero Atlas shot would be my favorite.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, especially with the way the sort of light is peeking up here, coming through. It's very much that Gandalf the White revelation, right? I love it.
That magical element that Vero Atlas has, definitely creeping in there for sure.
And then Blight. So the other thing with these, I got to assume, based on what I've heard Trevor sort of like comment on with his time photographing other figures, these figures that he shot were the same ones that that Kato and Inutabi were able to handle, in that they were like final product.
I think so. This was sort of the early shipment. So they kind of send you the first ones off the line. So I believe that these are like full production figures. Yeah.
Which is great, because, I've heard him talk about how hard it is, right, to work with the prototypes that, are real temperamental. These are the same figures that you and I will have in hand. And so they're fully posable, and they can kind of do what an action figure can and should do, versus, he doesn't have to worry about them falling apart. They can stand on their own. They can hold their weapons. It's easy to put the weapons in and out. You don't have to worry about breaking anything. So you can see that he's having fun with some of these poses. And I would love to see the entire sort of roll of these shoots. This one has a little bit more of the atmosphere with sort of this mist, and the mist that he's got going on. It's cool to kind of be able to look at these, and we've had some great shots. Those initial shots that I became familiar with when they're promoting the line that I used in the video, where they're kind of sort of standing in front of this wall or whatever. I love those too. I right off the bat, they kind of put them in this environment that was really interesting, but there wasn't a whole lot of posing going on, because again, I think those are probably really early prototypes. These are just really cool to kind of see.
And that's the thing, now that we're seeing these figures, in photographers' hands, right? Like in what you can do with them.
I will say that of all the toys that I collect, this could survive doing all sorts of things, right? This is really something that I could see being mass market, bought by kids, played with every day. Of the lines that I collect, it's closest to like Masterverse, right? Mattel figures, I'm not really worried about. I will say, actually, that Mattel Masterverse figures, I feel like sometimes when I'm posing them, they're not nearly as posable and articulated as the AWOK figures are.
No.
And because of that, as I get to some of those points, I feel like I'm potentially stressing the plastic. With these, like, I don't know at what point I'm going to hit that that moment where I might break something, but these things just kind of move. They remind me of Hasbro figures, and I don't actually collect a ton of them, but I have a couple classified. And I'm always impressed by those figures too, in terms of like they can pose them, and I'm not really worried about breaking anything, and they can get in really cool positions. So Yeah.
Yeah, they have the articulation of some of those figures with the durability
Yep.
that Hasbro just isn't bothering to offer.
Yep. 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 Oops. And here we go. Like I forgot. Yeah, let's take a look real
Yeah, you
quick.
did way more as
Tiberius.
well. Yeah.
That's right. I don't fully know what's happening on this shot, by the way, like because he's leaning forward. So
Mhm.
there's some kind of magic trickery that's happening here in terms of how he's standing up like that. But it's really cool. And what I like about this in particular is you get that blur, that softness back here.
Mhm.
And he's fully crisp up here, give you that sense of depth. It's pretty cool to see him in this kind of realistic pose and action shot.
It's fun to get them in those poses, and you know what? I bet that's actual. I bet that's balanced like that.
It could be, and we see it. Oh, oops, precious. We see it here, and I love his behind the scenes shots.
Is there a little wire there?
There is. Yep, he
Oh,
photoshopped
okay.
that guy
Okay.
out. That's one of those flight
Oh,
stands.
and from there, I also see that he's kind of tilted sideways a little bit more. But you can get these in surprising poses.
Oh
Balance.
yeah, I had mine sitting on my table. Probably not good for the stress, although I wasn't too worried. Standing on one leg. Just it's fun. It's kind of cool. I kept calling him monkey yoga.
So Trevor does a lot of great behind the scenes stuff too, which we were
Yeah.
kind of looking at there for a second.
Shinari Legionary. I'm looking at this guy. I'm like, wow. Just kind of remembering how great they are. That
I always
armor.
feel like I play with my toys quite a bit and that I pose them up pretty well. And then I see like professional toy photographers pose their figures and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's a different level. That's a totally different thing that they're doing.
This has always been my one of my favorite things to do is get two hands on a weapon.
2 hands on, yeah.
Even for Lego, I love doing that for little Lego minifigs.
Yeah.
So cool. Look at that setting. This is oh gosh, I'm totally forgetting on the dial.
He's used that dial for the Cosmic Legion stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember whose it is, but I can't remember right now. But this looks great. Again, very, very much in like the horrid labs, right?
So many of them are in that sort of natural setting, but Kali being in this kind of technological setting is bang on.
And man, do I love this thing. That thing is so cool. Here we go. The Ravager. Again, two hands on a weapon, man. There's there's something that feels very like natural and real about that to me. For some reason.
Sure.
Look at that face. Love it, man. It's one of my favorites for whatever reason. There's a behind the scenes shot. There's that flight stand that got photoshopped out. These Alonzi lights here. Very cool. Those are cool stands. Yeah, I mean, it's such cool things. Like he's just like a flat board here with a background. Then you've got a couple of 3D pieces to sell the image. This light source is going through, getting diffused by this thing. That's cool, man. Oh, it's so cool. That setup's cool. There's the camera. Yeah, man. Trevor does great work, and I'm super happy to have him working on Animal Warriors of the Kingdom. It just further enhances the brand, if you will.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He looks great. Look at that.
Those daggers, too. Like,
yeah,
his sword that he comes with, too, that's sort of like Pale's sword is cool. But those daggers are so unique. Like that's how I sort of have mine on the shelf is with those two daggers.
He has to have those daggers as they're perfect.
It just feels more Pale. Like it feels more in line with him. Like just even what we've seen in the comics in terms of his fighting style and in terms of sort of how he moves. I think it suits him better than the sword.
If you get hit with these things, man, that's making a mess. That's like cutting through muscle. It's like the Velociraptor from Jurassic Park, right? When he's holding onto that claw. Yeah, that's what I think of. That's really cool. Oh, I gotta ask him about this base. That's cool.
Yeah, just all the elements that just go into that, right? Like, he must start with an idea of like what he wants the shot to look like. And then it's, you still have to build it from that table up, right? You got to put the first layer down, but
Yep.
everything is from the perspective of the camera. So you're,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when we see these behind the scenes shots, you know, we see some of the flight stands, we see some of the blocks that aren't, you know, wait a minute, that's not in a forest. It's this big black block or whatever. Um, you know, the lighting, the diffuser sheets, and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely fantastic to see how much goes into that, because I'm like, I get frustrated with just my iPhone and like a light, and I'm like, you know, it doesn't look the way that I want. And it's like, yeah, because he
Yeah.
spends hours setting it up to make it
Yeah.
look like that.
You know, I'm going to actually, in addition, I will put in some links down in the description to Trevor's stuff just because, one, I'm a fan, but it, like, as we're talking about this, he does some really great, there's a couple of different videos that I've seen him on other people's channels talking about photos and then some of his
Oh
own
yeah.
behind the scenes stuff that,
Hmm.
that again, if for whatever reason you haven't been able to come across Trevor's work before, you need to just like, it's really just educational stuff.
Hmm.
Even like this stuff, right? Just this little piece of foam where you can just shove those things in there. And this is, again, I'm intrigued by this. It's probably like a piece of aluminum with, you can screw into them, right? So these stands are screwed into
Yeah, yeah,
them,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like, oh. And then I've heard him say this a bunch of times, like, nah, just for reflectors, yeah, sure, you can pay for an expensive reflector, or you can go down to the dollar store and grab yourself a white foam core. That's all this
Hmm.
is, right? Same. Yeah. Anyway, cool stuff. 1/6 shooter shooting Animal Warriors of the Kingdom. I hope that's a thing that happens consistently for the life of the line, because it's good stuff.
Hmm. I mean, huge shout out to the whole team. You know, Jason is sort of the creative, you know, beast behind all of this, but you know, he's got Itama, Jeremy, you know, Trevor 1/6 shooter doing some of the pictures, Brandon Gary doing the lettering for the comic book, and
Mm-hmm.
just sort of everybody that's involved. There's yet to be a misstep in anything that I've seen, and I think, you know, maybe I'm a shill. Maybe I'm a little bit blinded. You know, I've got the blinders on and I'm not seeing the things that they're not doing well enough or whatever, but I'm just loving everything that they're doing right now. And I can't wait to get more figures. I can't wait to get more comic books. I can't wait to talk about more of this stuff,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because that's another thing. The community has been absolutely amazing.
Yep.
I think the IP is so much fun that it's hard to not be excited and to be having fun with it.
I'm with you. And I think, there's that word shill, and I know we kind of toss it around kind of jokingly, but ultimately we're fans. And,
Mhm.
we've been mentioning as we're going through this, like, we make connections to all sorts of other genre stuff because that's what we've consumed, right? The
Mhm.
steady
Mhm.
diet of
Mhm.
nerdy stuff that, yeah, like after a while, you can kind of get a little bit critical and recognize, like, no, I like this, I don't like this.
Mhm.
And so where I was going with the idea that it's great to have Trevor shooting photos now and really getting like this solid photography, figure photography in your corner, but you've also got this great artwork, right, that we're seeing in the comic books. Utama also does the artwork on the packaging.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just like some really great stuff to go along with the fantastic figures to really help sort of sell this and help people feel like this is a really sort of special product, if you will,
Oh, for
once you get
sure.
these things
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
hand,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, we're shills, but we're just hardcore fans, is what it is, right? And
We're
so
shills by choice.
absolutely. So, on that note, that pretty much concludes what we're going to do for this segment of the comic book. Updates a little bit on where the toys are at and the exciting news of new creatives working on helping with the marketing. Anyways, friend, it's been great to talk with you again. In theory, and I'm just going to keep saying it, Sunday, June 25th, this video should be dropping. Hopefully you're watching it the first day it's out. Then you can kind of in your mind say, okay, 2 weeks from now there'll be a live stream over on Highly Articulated with Monkey Business, and that's where we're going to do our thing with folks in the room, doing the live stream, getting your
Mhm.
questions, your comments, and we'll do a little bit more back and forth.
I'm sort of in talks with a couple people as far as guests and things. I don't want to get ahead of myself by throwing names out there
Sure.
because, you know, scheduling doesn't always work out. But
Yep.
needless to say, you know, if we're talking about them in these videos,
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to get them on the other videos.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that. There should be a few fun ones.
Cool. And if you have any ideas, please definitely leave that in the comments below. We're doing this thing spread across 2 channels. So you're here right now on the Brick Something channel, but over Adam's got the Highly Articulated channel. All that info is in the description. So please make sure you're liking, subscribing over there too, so you don't miss out on whenever these things actually do come out.
Tune in, hang out. We're just we're doing this because it's fun.
Yeah.
And we hope that it's fun for anybody that's watching. So
Yeah.
as you said, if you're having fun with us, like and subscribe, and we'll go from there.
Perfect. Cool.
We're happy to have everybody along for the ride.
It's awesome. I think it's time that we sort of cut this episode. Woo! Thanks, folks. Peace, power, all that stuff. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.